A lorry driver broke down in tears as she met the family of the Queen's doctor who was crushed under her 20-ton vehicle while riding his bike in London. Dr. Peter Fisher, 67, consultant physician for the Royal Household since 2002, was cycling just yards from the Royal London Hospital for Integrated Medicine in Holborn, where he worked as research director, when he wobbled and swerved in front of the vehicle. Samantha Southouse, who has been a professional lorry driver for 20 years, shook hands with his family after the hearing and said, "I don't know what has happened. So sorry for your loss." She was driving at just 8 miles per hour and said she never saw the father of two doctor, who was wearing a helmet, before the collision. He was pronounced dead at the scene by London Air Ambulance paramedics around 30 minutes after the crash. Speaking from her home in Hayes, West London, she said she has been unable to return to driving. She said, "It was devastation on that day. Even with the most careful and observant driver you can imagine, there's blind spots on our vehicles. I never got accused, however there's emotion. There's a human side to this. I'm not a lorry, I'm a lorry driver. I'm a human and the company I work for do their utmost to protect other road users. There's education I go through as part of the group I belong to. We are educated about vulnerable road users." His family were very gracious today. "There's no closing of this for me or them." Answering questions from senior coroner Mary Hassel at the inquest on Wednesday, Ms Southouse confirmed she was well rested at the time the crash happened, just over 3 hours into her shift, and added, "I looked around absolutely, and as I moved I was looking forwards. No, I absolutely didn't see Dr. Fisher. That could not have happened." She became tearful as she told how she was forced to reverse her lorry off the doctor, whose daughters are aged 19 and 22, on instruction of emergency services at the scene. Witness Simon Cooney described seeing the doctor wobble and swerve before being crushed under the truck's near front wheel. He said, "I got the impression that he sped off on his bicycle and then he swerved in that direction. I had the image from a child, like when they take the stabilisers off my bike." Forensic collision investigator Brian Gamble said it was perfectly reasonable Ms Southouse didn't see Dr. Fisher in her mirrors as he paused on her near side before moving off. He said, "I'm not overly surprised that she hasn't seen him. He's potentially within view for 13 seconds. Having cycled down for 4 seconds, and he's come to a stop there. Potentially yes, Dr. Fisher was in view of her, however there are many caveats you have to put with that. Where he's positioned, he's right on the edge of that mirror, the most distorted part of the mirror, which makes it difficult for a driver to identify a cyclist. So you have got 6 or 7 seconds where he's there to be seen. However, it's identifying that it is a cyclist there and identifying him is a hazard. I've no doubt. I think it's quite likely that when Ms Southouse has carried out the mirror checks, she would have carried them out before Dr. Fisher moved into that position." Asked what it meant for the driver to be able to tell them, "I'm so sorry for your losses," in court, she said, "There's no words to describe it. It wasn't for me to be able to, it was on their terms." She added, "There's a huge hole in their lives, a huge hole that I recognize, and every single day of my life since that day, and forever I have thoughts for them. A loss that's that quick. His life was lost that day, which was horrendous for me. I'm a victim, But there's a lot of us squished into a tiny city. There's rules of the road that should be considered by everybody using roads. I'm a lorry driver. I save lives every day by driving carefully. My life could have stopped that day emotionally. It did for a long time. I'm back to work. I'm not driving. I'm getting back to living. I'm not better now. She said she had received counseling after the traumatic accident and added, "It is 5 months next week. It broke me. I thought about how I was going to continue as a human. I did not understand how I could." She said she didn't have suicidal thoughts and added, "There's no blame in this instance. It's a fear for any lorry driver worth their salt." Ms Southouse, who has no children and looks after her 80-year-old mother in their terraced home in Hayes, West London, added, "It broke my family too." She thanked passers-by for not blaming her for the collision at the time, saying, "Emotionally they held me. I thanked them all that day." The human state, which you would imagine would be almost the big bad lorry driver, is not how people behave there. It was not their point of view. She urged motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists to be safer on the roads. She said, "Everybody has to be educated, the entirety of anyone using any road in this city. But they shouldn't have to be educated deliberately. They should be aware of their surroundings and aware of their impact on other people." Ruling his death a road traffic collision at St Pancras Coroner's Court, Ms Hassel said, "It seems to me that all the evidence points in the same direction. He was cycling in an entirely unremarkable manner. He was wearing a crash helmet, and he was where he was meant to be, on the inside. A lorry was also proceeding in an entirely unremarkable manner, and also traveling west along High Holborn. The lorry paused because of the traffic. Dr. Fisher was visible for 4 seconds as he come up the inside of the lorry, but of course, that was a mirror, and the lorry driver has 6 mirrors to look at, as well as through the front of the lorry and either side. She wasn't looking at the particular mirror at that particular time, and then he was in her blind spot on the front corner of the lorry. He was then only visible for 1 or 2 seconds when she moved off, and by then she was looking out. It's so easily done. It's so easily done in a very busy, congested road that he came out in the precise moment the traffic moved forwards. It's difficult, I think, for a cyclist who hasn't sat in a lorry to imagine the restriction in the view of the lorry driver." She added she would not make a prevention of future deaths report, saying, "Sometimes a junction layout can be changed to make it safer. I've thought about this a great deal, but I cannot think of anything useful I can say by making a prevention of future deaths report." Dr. Fisher's sister Susie Hearn said, "Dr. Peter Fisher was a remarkably gifted and special man whose death is a tragic and irreplaceable loss, not only for his family and friends who loved him dearly, but also to the cause of medicine and homeopathy in this country and worldwide. He had been the homeopath to the royal household since 2002 and worked with Prince Charles on his Foundation for Integrated Health. Peter was an energetic man who had cycled throughout his life and who regularly cycled to and from work. He was exceptionally intelligent and knowledgeable and had interests including travel, art, gardening, history, politics, and culture of all kinds, swimming and skiing. As a person, Peter was kind, loyal, caring, non-judgmental and modest. She thanked passers-by who gave him chest compressions and mouth-to-mouth before he was pronounced dead at 9:53 a.m., just 23 minutes after paramedics arrived. And added, "This accident led to a tragic and unnecessary waste of life. In order to save further precious lives, we urge the Mayor of London to urgently address the issue of cycle safety in London by looking at people-prioritized streets and improved lorry design." Dr. Fisher's brother, sister, former wife and many family members and colleagues attended the hearing. The doctor, of Highgate, who also worked with Prince Charles on his Foundation for Integrated Health, had been out on National Cycle to Work Day. The doctor's grieving family urged Mayor of London Sadiq Khan to improve safety for cyclists following his death in busy central London at about 9:30 a.m. on August 15 last year.